Hello and welcome back to Insaka. My name is Sandala Mwanje, and today we want to continue with the subject of suicide. And if you didn't watch the last episode, please do so because this is a build up. And again, I'm here with my co-host.
Billy Sichone. I'm glad to be here again.
We are good. And my two friends there.
Emmanuel Njoroge, glad to be here as well.
Alan Nyara Zinyoni, glad to be here.
Good. We ended off on giving the reasons from research as to why people commit suicide. Okay. So today, what I want us to do is to see or to answer the question, does the Bible address suicide? Is this a subject that is actually talked about in the Bible? So if we can get, as many Bible examples as possible, and then with that, I would want to also, just delve a little bit into the reasons behind those fellas or characters in the Bible entertaining suicidal thoughts or committing suicide. So feel free to get us started with any Bible passage or any character.
Okay, we do have examples in the scriptures, and I have several of them, but I will not, some of them I'll just throw them off so that you can check in your own time. If you do a scan in the Bible, you will notice that the Bible does record, in fact, some cases of suicide or some, thoughts, somebody entertaining those thoughts to end their lives. There are just instances. You remember, the Bible is narrative; it's giving us what actually happened, and in that case, so let me just give you a few. I'll give a bit of background on some of them, but others I'll just mention. Okay. We have a case of Abimelech in Judges 9, verse 52 to 54. If we had time, we would look at that one. Then there's Ahithophel, 2 Samuel 17:23. Then Zimri, 1 Kings 16:18. My friends will add. Then there's one of King Saul. I think this one I'll comment a bit. King Saul in 1 Samuel. I'm not sure if I got it right, but it's chapter 1, verse 1 to 6, or 1 Chronicles 10, 1 to 6. Now, remember, King Saul is at war, and then he's injured by the enemy. So he tells his servant to finish him off, because he doesn't want to be killed by the uncircumcised fellows. So what does he do? He falls on his sword and he dies. So that's another case of.
So what's that about? Because that's interesting, and I think when we addressed research data, it did allude to a cause like that. What's that about?
In this case, you remember, among the Jewish people, they considered themselves to be the people of God, and any Jew was circumcised. And by that token, they were kind of part of the covenant people of God. And they perceived it something that is beneath their status.
Yeah.
If somebody who is not part of them, and they are called uncircumcised, people who are not part of them, to kill them, they said, no, that's a shame to our nation. You remember the honor thing? That's a shame. So King Saul, when he's injured, he feels, look, I'm injured, I'm still alive, but I'll die. Let not the enemy come and finish me off. So what does he do? It's more honorable for me to die by somebody around, so that if they come to do anything to my body, I'm already dead anyway. Yeah. So they won't get the credit.
Perhaps even thinking about the idea of failure, right? So he's a king, he's leading the procession, he's leading his army, advancing against the enemy, but the enemy has advanced against them, and they're clearly being defeated in this case. a lot of shame comes with failure. And so, because as a king, I do not want to be perceived as a failure and to be captured having failed. I'd rather die.
Do we have an equivalent thinking to that of this day in the church? I think in the previous episode we had talked about this honor culture. Yeah.
That's a good one. An honor culture shows up in different ways. There are some cultures, especially the Far East, in Asia and other parts, the failure is so shameful. So you would rather die and disappear. Those are the words that you were saying. And in a church, we talked about elders, pastors, and there's this culture that we develop. We don't expect that there would be moral failures, that we would do things that are displeasing, not only to God, but shameful to... So people don't feel they can face up to it. So they would rather end their lives. And we gave an example of a pastor who took his life at one point. It was shocking to all of us. But I tend to think, I wasn't there, but I tend to think that pastor could not face up.
Yes.
And
That's
he
what
said,
it
look,
is.
and he says, I'd rather die.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that's what it is. It's where what I've done is so shameful, I cannot face society, or I cannot die by natural means. Let me end my life here. But you see, that is so disturbing in a sense, because anyway, when we talk about solutions, we'll come to that. But it's a failure to realize that your identity is not in your reputation. Your identity is in Jesus Christ. In fact, if you're looking for my true identity, I'm a sinner. If you are looking for my true identity according to the flesh, I'm messed up. I'm everything that Romans chapter 3 says. I'm not good. But in Christ, any righteousness in me is the righteousness of Christ. So there are all these lies that actually feed into suicide, which we should come and address. But anyway, let's get going.
Let's continue. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we have talked about the King Saul example, and he dies. But then we have the case of Samson, Judges 16. Remember, Samson was the strongest man that lived. He was, and then he ends up to have this lady called Delilah. She worried him, and men sometimes we feel we're very, very strong, but these women are very much stronger. So this woman finds out his secret, and eventually he loses not only his eyes, but his hair, where the secret of his strength was. Now, we are told that when he lost the sight and so on, these people who did that were uncircumcised, the Philistines. So we are told one time they're having a party, in a big building. And so Samson, his hair apparently had grown a bit. And then he's standing between two pillars, and before he does it, he says, Lord, let me die here, more or less for your honor and because what happened was not good. So he pushes these pillars, and the whole building just comes crumbling down. And over 3,000, many people died, and including Samson himself.
Right.
Yeah. So that's one case of. Another one is Judas. Of course, we know it in the scriptures.
Yeah.
He betrays Jesus.
Yeah, but we need to pause on Judas because I think that most of the suicide cases today have the Judas cause. Have the Judas cause. Okay, so and what I mean here is you make a wrong turn, you make a wrong choice, you make a sinful choice, and the consequences of your choices come rushing in your face. Answer: let me kill myself. What did you say about what I'm calling the
Judas. I think underlying the Judas syndrome would be the sin of pride, because you are not prepared to face the consequences of your action, but you are the one who actually initiated the action, because Judas was the one who actually went and sought to betray Jesus.
Yeah.
But when he was faced with those consequences, he chose not to face them, but rather to take his life. So I think underlying that, there is a self-centeredness, there is pride there, and that's not the biblical way of dealing with wrongdoing.
Yeah. Would you say irresponsibility as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You think about our culture today, where there's a lot of spontaneity in terms of the decisions one makes. Like you look at all the advertisements that we have; they're always like make a quick decision, make a quick decision. And oftentimes I think we lack that self-discipline of thinking through the repercussions of some of the decisions that we're making in our actions, and we end up making wrong decisions a lot, and they do have consequences that we never weighed in the first place. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And I think we need to underline that, and what we need to underline is that sin has consequences.
Yeah.
You reap what you sow. So you cannot choose your sin and somehow expect zero consequences.
Yeah.
Okay, like when you betray God's son, what are you expecting? Like, yay, Judas. No. Okay, so we have. I think even in science, there's that. To every action, there's a
Equal and opposite reaction.
you're intelligent. I've forgotten my science.
Yeah.
Okay.
Newton's third law.
But apart from it being biblical, it's the law of life that to every action there's an equal reaction. And so what it means, therefore, is that we have to be ready to face the consequences of our actions. Take responsibility. In fact, that would be the word. Take responsibility for your actions. But so this idea, this tendency, this trend of wanting to run away from your consequences, it's the epitome of irresponsibility.
Yeah. Because, like he said, just to weigh in, he talked about pride. Because we feel, no, I can't. So you think the quick exit is, let me end my life and go into nothingness, into oblivion, annihilation. But those are imaginations that we have. So Judas is a case of somebody, he's done something, then he realizes, I've betrayed innocent blood.
Right.
And he eventually ends up in the field called Akaudama, in Acts chapter 1, the field of blood. And even his intestines come out. So sometimes we want to run away.
Yeah. Let's talk about another.
Well, the other two I have is maybe my friends can add on, but these other ones I wanted to add, they're just those who had suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
But,
And I think those are important.
okay. The first one is the Philippian jailer in Acts 16. Remember, he's in charge of this jail. And then somehow there's an earthquake, the prison doors are open, and he looks, he sees, the prisoners have run away.
Yeah.
Now, in Roman times, if you were charged to guard somebody, and if they escaped, it's your life. So in his mind, so in their life, when he sees the door is gone, he says, finished, I'm dead. So he says, I'm as good as dead. So he's about to kill himself. And Paul says, hey, wait,
We are here.
we're all here. And the gospel is preached, and then he becomes a Christian.
It would be interesting to hear that guy's testimony of salvation in heaven. Like, brother,
Hey, what happened there?
I was about to die and got to hell.
And then the second one.
Maybe before we go there, That's interesting because I've been, reading up and following up a case in the U.S. of a woman prison warder. She was in a relationship with an inmate, and she helps him escape. So they escape together, and they find them. But before they could get to them, she takes her life. So the inmate, goes back. Somehow the inmate thinks his life is precious. But anyway, so she takes her own life. But I'm just trying to connect with what you're saying, the Philippian jailer, that we are not talking about remote examples, but these are things that feed into suicide. And I'm sure she was thinking and feeling, my punishment will be stiffer than even this guy, and the whole lot of me in jail, so yeah, maybe we can survey another.
Let me just
Yeah.
give you one, then my brethren will come in. It's a case of Elijah. Remember, Elijah, he's so discouraged, and he says, I'd rather my life ends. Because, Jezebel is after his blood. In 1 Kings chapter 19, his thoughts, he says, I would rather die. But God, gives him food and then strengthens him. So that's a prophet of God.
So
Discouragement, right?
Let's talk a little bit about that, guys.
Yeah, I could add to that and say, I think especially today with all the expectations that are there, people do not know how to deal with discouragement, number one. Number two, people also have very unrealistic ideas of what those expectations, or expectations should be there, but even those expectations from our vantage point should be realistic, right? And I think in the Psalms we find a lot of such instances where the psalmist, for example, is exceedingly discouraged by something, and he even speaks to the extent of dying is better. But then he just doesn't end there. He still, even in the midst of that, he still has some ray of hope. And I think that's one of the things that lacks.
Now, I like that, but maybe can we talk about what made Elijah discouraged? Because one thing that he has brought out is having these unrealistic ideas, assessments, and so you see, Elijah thinks he's the only prophet,
Right.
and he was dwelling in this false reality. Everyone has abandoned you.
Yeah.
I'm the only one. I'm just alone. And don't we sometimes think like that? Until God brings in a reality that Elijah wasn't seeing, and he says, no, you are wrong. I've got, in fact, not just people, but how many prophets did he? 7,000 prophets who have not bowed down their knee to bow. So when you begin to define truth in your own small world, okay, and not looking at what God is doing in the big picture, that can lead to discouragement and then that suicidal thought that Elijah had. Yeah.
Yeah, because in life we go through different patches, and sometimes you expect people to support you. Suppose you expect people to encourage you, but maybe just one word just so breaks you down, and your life seems to be curving in. But like we have established, we need to think of the big picture. What is God doing?
So I'm when you talked about discouragement, I was thinking a lot of pastors today try to do things out of maybe their own strength, and when it doesn't come out, that can be cause for discouragement.
Yeah.
Like if someone doesn't look at the source of his own strength, like in the Elijah case, he failed to realize that it was God who was sustaining him, who was empowering him. At the end of the day, there was this focus on himself, and that can be cause for discouragement when you come face to face with who you are as a natural man.
So when things don't go your way, so maybe another example I can give us is Jonah. Okay, he thinks life should be like this. God should be like this. God should act like this. And God shows him, no, I'm bigger than that. And I want you to go and preach to my enemies, your enemies. And he just can't stomach that. But how many people find themselves in a situation where they planned it this way, God says, no, it's this way, and they take their own life. I mean, I'm reminded of a young man who took his life because he thought he was going to marry this girl, and this girl married another person, and he's like, just, my life is done.
In this.
The end of the world.
Yeah. Alan, have you ever been rejected?
Yeah,
How
I
did you feel?
I didn't get suicidal.
Yeah, obviously. You are here, so you didn't kill yourself.
But I think there's an element in which it seems like it's the end of the world. Like Emmanuel said, you set expectations, and in your mind it's so clear. You think this is how it's going to unfold, and then life goes the other way, and you feel dejected. You feel like you're a failure, but. I think what's important is, like in the Elijah case, God brought him back to reality. Like there are 7,000 who have not bowed down to bow, and I think in a similar way, we should also look at the reality. Like it's not the end of the world. Like I think we highlighted in the previous episode. Someone says a part of me has died, but is that really what has happened?
Is that true?
Yeah, that's not the reality. Yes, they were a valuable part of your life. Yes, you thought life would go this way, but you shouldn't take your life because life hasn't gone the way that you had planned.
We are going to end here. Part of our purpose in this episode was simply to show you and to educate ourselves that the Bible is not silent about suicide. It addresses suicidal thoughts, or at least it brings to the fore the fact that real people in the Bible had suicidal thoughts. Real people in the Bible committed suicide. So in the next episode, please tune in, because we want to talk about help for suicide. What is God's help for suicide? We'll see you next week.